Okay. Well, good evening, everybody. It is 7:03 on my clock here, so I'm going to call this meeting to order. This is a meeting on Tuesday, August 20th of Urbana's Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission, and we will just start with a roll call of everyone who's here. Present. Okay, great. And yeah, welcome to our new member. It's great to have you on board. Feel free to, especially after the meeting, introduce yourself to everybody. And we're a pretty friendly bunch, so jump in anytime you have questions. That's right. Sue's trouble. So we have quite an agenda tonight, and we will dive right in, but we always start the meeting with approval of our minutes and then with public input, and we have one public input card. So first, let's do... we first start with an approval of the agenda so that we can move ahead with the agenda that was distributed. Does somebody want to make a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
I'll make a motion.
I'll
Okay.
second.
A motion by Cynthia and second by Amelia. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, we will proceed. Next, we had minutes from our last meeting in February distributed. And those minutes were, in April distributed. Those minutes were sent out so people could read them. And I wanted to know if there were any corrections or any motion to approve them.
Nobody has corrections.
Any corrections? Okay, a motion by Brad. Is there a
And
second?
I'll second it.
Okay. I do have one little correction, which is the file correctly says it's April, but the top of the minutes has the February date. That's where I
Oh,
got April and February confused. So, yeah, we can straighten that one out. But any other corrections or comments on the minutes? Okay. All in favor of approval, please say aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, thanks. Then public input tonight. I have one public input card from Bill Brown on the topic of bike lanes. So come on up to the microphone, and you probably know the drill, but tell us your thoughts.
Hi, I'm Bill Brown, Nevada Street, and I'm also on the City Council Ward 4. And we talked about the bike lane specifically on Broadway Avenue at the Committee of the Whole meeting 2 weeks or a week and a half ago, a little more than a week ago. I talked about that there, so I wanted to expand on my thoughts here because I don't often disagree with bicyclists. I'm a bicyclist myself. I ride a lot, and I've been riding in town for probably 30 years. But I think on Broadway, before I talk about Broadway, I want to say I do like the Broadways or the bike lanes in a lot of other areas. I use them on Washington Street a lot, Philo Road, and I've started to use the ones on Florida. I like those too, even though there are some parked cars there, and I don't like riding next to parked cars, but there aren't very many, so I can deal with that. I use them on Illinois Street a little bit, but usually I don't use them on the section where there's parked cars. So I guess that was kind of my main thing with Broadway, is that one side of that would have parked cars, and that you can't really ride very close to parked cars because people hide and open their doors in front of you and stuff, and it's kind of dangerous with visibility and everything. We did get a lot of feedback from people who were afraid of losing their parking spaces too. That wasn't my main consideration, but I think other council members probably was. And it's understandable. There's a lot of houses there with single car driveways where you'd have to stack cars up in order to park there. And that's the way mine is, and I can get by with it like that even when I had 2 or 3 drivers living there, because it's a house and we all live together and you can get your roommates to switch cars. But some of those houses are apartments. It's a lot harder to knock on your neighbor's door and say, hey, can you move your car so I can get out? So it's understandable. A lot of them use the street parking there. So I think the way we left it was they were going to try to do kind of a parking and count to see how many people actually use the parking. I've been by there, I was by there tonight, and I think there's usually 12 to 15 cars, and that's before high school gets back. And so I wouldn't be surprised if that's going to still be a main issue. And almost every resident on the street was worried about losing the parking. So I think I had one suggestion maybe for the next bicycle master plan, is if it would be possible in the draft phase or at some stage to make it real obvious to council members where they could potentially lose parking in their ward, so that they might go talk to the people in the streets beforehand and before it approves the master plan, so that you kind of take care of it up front instead of waiting until it comes up in council and then everybody comes out to complain. And you have to make it pretty obvious, like with a map or something, because I've learned that council members don't always read every word that we're given in these documents. So I think it would be helpful to have a map with like highlighted areas where you go lose parking, even if it's not part of the master plan. And I meant to go back and check to see if it was actually in the master plan. I think it was at some stage, but I think it just needs to be a little bit more obvious maybe. Just on other thoughts on the bike lanes. On Broadway, I think the average daily traffic I looked up was about 800 to 1,000, and that varies year to year. On the new site, on the IDOT website, the interactive site, you can look up the traffic counts on. There's actually a box you can click now that gives you historical traffic counts for the last 3 or 4 years, and I found that was really useful because I think the way they do it, they count 3 days or something, then take an average when they do the count. But because where we live, it's so seasonal, depending on when students are here and everything, that it can vary a lot year to year, just kind of depending when they do the count. So by using that historical, you see it varies quite a bit year to year, and you can kind of take an average that way. But that 800 to 1,000 was about half of what the count is on Illinois Street, say down near Kohler, where we just have a bike route, where it's a lot higher there. So it's not like it's not like the car traffic is real high there, where you need the protection like you do on some of the other streets. Was that my time? Okay.
Oh, no, go right ahead. That was not your time limit. Yeah.
I know you have a long agenda. One other thought on the traffic counts. What was it? Oh, the other thing about Broadway I kind of like, and I think there could be a potential to do something kind of new, like a bike boulevard or something, where you actually kind of restrict local traffic and maybe use some special markings, just because it does get a lot of heavy bicycle traffic. So if you have ideas on that, I think that would be useful. And the other thing is, with all the bicycle traffic, it adds additional safety in numbers, as you know, just because there are more bicyclists there, people expect to see the bicyclists there. So that's another reason where you don't really need the lanes when there's enough traffic. There's probably some threshold or something, but with all the bicycle use, I think people do expect it there. There's also a school crossing at Oregon, so at least in the morning and in the afternoon when school's in session, there's a crossing guard there. It's a safe route to school for Leal School, so they're crossing that way. I think the only other thing I heard brought up maybe was riding with your kids. And one of the suggestions when you're riding with your kids is to kind of take the wingman position, kind of off to the side, a little bit behind, so that you see the threats the same time they do. You don't want them out in front where they see the threats first, because you don't see them, you know, your view might be blocked or something. You don't want them behind where they can drift back and get lost. So that's kind of another reason, if you're going to be riding with your kids, to have a nice wide street like that and not have to be confined to a narrow lane, or feel like you have to be confined to a narrow lane. So I think that's all I had. I like the new bike maps. I like all the education efforts that people are doing in town, and keep up the good work. Thanks.
Great, thanks. Any questions for Bill? I guess I was wondering, in response to that, Rebecca, it sounds like I really liked a couple of these really specific suggestions, especially about, like, in the next bike master plan, being really obvious about any impacts on parking, or considering bike boulevards as a possible treatment, which we didn't even do last time around because that wasn't even an official treatment really 5 years ago. And being really thoughtful about how we choose when to put bike lanes next to parking, and kind of reviewing what is our best practice for when that's appropriate and when it's not. So I wonder, Rebecca, can you kind of be the conduit maybe to convey that really good feedback back to the steering committee working on the bike master plan as well, so that we can make sure to kind of follow up on some of that and address it as we go?
Yeah, actually, all of those things are things that we are specifically looking at in this bicycle master plan update. And I'll talk about that more. It's the next item on the agenda. But those are all things that we'll talk about and reevaluate how we do them. So
Cool.
those will definitely be heard. And then we'll also have public meetings as well that we hope to hear more comments like that as well.
Cool. Great. Thanks. Okay. Then we will start in with the business items on the agenda. And the first one under old business is from Rebecca, the update on the bike master plan, update process.
So we have begun the bicycle master plan, the update. We've had one meeting, and our second meeting of the steering committee will actually be next week. I'm just going to bring up one thing. So we are the Regional Planning Commission, who is our consultant working on this. We've started gathering data, and part of that is a travel mode choice survey that we are asking all residents of Urbana to take. It's asking specifically about biking and walking for transportation, but we want people who don't bike and walk to take the survey as well. So if you go to the City of Urbana's homepage, you saw there's a story here under News and Press, participate in the Bicycle Master Plan update, and you click on that. And then right here, complete a travel mode choice survey. That takes you to the CUOTS website, to the survey. And you can go through, there are 5 pages. You can go through. It does ask you different questions about how you get around, what your usual travel mode is, and so on. And so even if you do not bike or walk, please fill it out. And maybe you could talk to your colleagues about filling it out, send it to any listservs that you're a part of. If you'd like a press release, I can forward it to you, and you can forward that to any email listservs. I can also forward you paper copies of a letter inviting people to take the survey. So far, this morning I checked, and we had 433 responses. 248 of those were done online, 169 were through the mail, and 16 were gathered during the public input for the long-range transportation plan. They have a large bus that they're taking around to different events, and they have the survey there, and so 16 of those surveys, those 433, were gathered that way. It is only for residents of Urbana, and it does ask, one of the pages does ask the closest intersection to where you live. And then I think you actually select the streets out of the drop-down boxes, and so if you don't live in Urbana, you won't be able to select the intersections near your house. So that's kind of the first phase. The Regional Planning Commission is also working on reviewing documents that are related to the Bicycle Master Plan that would have some relevance to it. So, for example, Champaign's Bicycle Vision, the Greenways and Trails Plan, which the Regional Planning Commission is also writing and doing an update on. The Urbana Park District is doing a Trails Master Plan simultaneously with ours, so that we're able to get some benefits. The Regional Planning Commission is also doing that one. We did start a little bit later than we intended, so we're slightly off our originally intended schedule. So the first public input meeting will actually probably be January or February. We were hoping to have it this fall, but due to our late start date, we're not able to. And we are, instead of, with our last plan, we had one public input meeting as the first phase, and that was at the Urbana Middle School. This time we will have 4. We're trying to reach out to our less served and low-income neighborhoods, and those are people who generally don't come to the regular meetings that we advertise in the regular ways. So we're also having, aside from one meeting at the Urbana Middle School, we're going to have one in the Learman neighborhood, one at King's School, and then we're also going to be reaching out to the Latino neighborhoods and having a meeting. We're not sure where yet that will be, but with those populations. And so what we're hoping to do on our last Bicycle Master Plan, we were creating a network from scratch. And so we took the input of the people that came to the meetings and we created a network that did cover the city, but it wasn't particularly extensive in certain neighborhoods where people were not well represented at the public meetings. And so this time we're trying to correct for some of that. So we're trying to take that original network that we created, which is fantastic, but we're trying to make it even better and reach farther into the community and serve people better. So I was going to show you the schedule, but my flash drive is not recognized by this computer. So I'll just go through. I have a paper copy here. So we'll be working on, at this meeting next week, the steering committee will be working on goals and objectives. So we'll take the goals and objectives from our current plan and review those, see what goals and objectives have we actually met, what ones are we, in progress of, and then try and think of what other goals would be appropriate for this new update. We're also working on an existing conditions evaluation. The Regional Planning Commission staff spent several weeks over the summer doing bicycle counts on different segments of our roadways so that we would have real data to help inform our decisions. And they will also be working on a travel demand analysis. And then at the end of that phase, we'll then have our public meetings, our first set of public meetings. Then in the background, the Regional Planning Commission will be working with the steering committee and will work on a proposed bicycle system and support facilities. Then we'll have another public meeting where we'll show that the draft network to the public and ask for comments, see if we've got everything right, if we're missing parts of town, if we need, if we have any pieces that don't make sense, asking people about the types of facilities that we've selected and are they the types of facilities that people want. And then we go back and take all of that comment and work it into a draft plan. So on the steering committee, I can tell you who is on the steering committee. So for the City of Urbana, myself, Brad Bennett, we're both on there. We have Lieutenant Bob Fitzgerald, who is one of our police officers, and so he will be representing the enforcement perspective. Also, Brandon Bowersox, our chair here, will be on the steering committee. And then we will also have another of our engineers, Craig Schonkweiler, because he does most of the actual designing, so he'll have the infrastructure perspective, as well as Brad. And then we have Tim Bartlett of the Urbana Park District, Randy Ashman of the Urbana School District. He is the Fields and Grounds supervisor, I believe. Amelia, another of our members here, will be on there. Also with the university, Stacy DeLorenzo. She is also with Facilities and Services. She's Transportation Infrastructure. Is that Morgan's former position? Cynthia Hoyle, another member here, will be on it or is on it. Then we have Nikki Hillier with the Champaign-Urbana Public Health District, representing the health aspect. Jeff Yockey, the president of Champaign County Bikes. And then with the Regional Planning Commission, Gabe Lewis, who is the lead planner. Rita Black, who is the Planning and Community Development, I think that's her title, director. And then Wes Maurer will also be working on the plan. He's actually the lead on the Urbana Park District plan. So he and Gabe will be working together on bits and pieces of this. And then we also have the head of Public Works, Bill Gray, the head of Community Development, Libby Tyler, the head of Planning, Robert Myers. They will all be not attending the meetings regularly, but they'll be keeping informed. They'll be getting all of the documents and so on. And actually, Jennifer Selby, our former engineer here with the City of Urbana, who worked very hard and was instrumental in the first bicycle master plan, will also be checking in with her to see if she has any insight for us, because she knows so intimately our bicycling situation here. I think that's it. If anyone has any questions, we will be providing updates to this committee and possibly asking for input at the meetings, as well as if there are times when we need your input and we're not having a meeting, that we might ask for input from you through email or through different ways, and also, of course, ask you to attend the public meetings and certainly to fill out the survey online and get everyone you know to fill it out as well. Does anyone have any questions?
I have a
Amelia?
question. What is the deadline for the survey? When is it
That is
closing?
a very good question. It is closing, and I sent an email about what the exact date was and didn't get an
Okay.
answer. It's until, I think, the end of the first week or just into the second week of September.
Okay.
So the Regional Planning Commission did statistical analysis to figure out what a statistically accurate population would be, and they mailed surveys to that population. They received a lot of them back saying that there was no one at that address, those addresses don't exist, and so on, because of the student population that's not in places at the moment. So we had it open for long enough that the students would be back for 2 weeks. So I think it's 2 weeks after they get back, which would be right around that kind of the 10th-ish of September.
I wanted to see if you'd be interested in me putting it in the e-week, which is the all staff and faculty newsletter for
That would be
the university.
fantastic.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll put that in there.
Do you have the emails that we sent out with the text? If not, you can just email me and I'll send
if I
that
don't
to you.
find them,
Mhm.
I'll ask you. Thanks.
And I assume other people here probably have a Facebook page or a Twitter maybe. Maybe, Rebecca, if you want to send out the link again to the whole committee, if people are willing this week to make a push and send it out to your friends, especially new people who might be back in town or people whose summer vacations are over and they're here now because semesters are starting. I think to hear from you all, because you know something about biking and walking in Champaign, people would trust you and take the time to fill out our 5-page survey based on you sharing it with folks you know. So
There were also some questions about, we had some people that did not like the questions about socio-demographic questions, specifically about income. And the question is still mandatory, but the page is not mandatory. And there was a reason why they did that. I was actually out of the office at that point, and there was a decision made. I wasn't here, and now Gabe is not here to talk about it. But when he gets back, we'll talk about whether or not that question can actually be made optional. So right now, someone can fill out the whole 5-page survey, and if they don't want to fill out the salary information, it would not save the data from that page, which is just the socioeconomic and demographic page. But we'll see if we can make that question optional so that we can get the other data at least on that page for people that don't want to give out that information.
Okay. Any other questions for Rebecca? Okay, thanks. Next on tonight's agenda then is another one from you, Rebecca, about the bike enforcement program.
This one I'll do over here.
Okay,
My notes are here.
for a change.
So we, last time we met, I think we talked about the bicycle enforcement program that we had created. Our police department, in particular, Lieutenant Bob Fitzgerald has worked very hard on this. I've worked with him. We created a program where bicycle offenders, so people who got tickets, what they get is actually called an NTA, a notice to appear. It's written against a city ordinance, not the Illinois Vehicle Code. And it was a $100 fine, and they could come in, sign a plea agreement, and then pay a $30 fine and take an education class. And I taught the classes. We had 2 of them in the beginning and the end of May. We had 49 bicyclists were ticketed, and they're ticketed for not stopping at stop signs and going the wrong way on one-way streets. And 48 of the 49 people that received tickets took the class. One person, it didn't work with their schedule, but so there was obviously people liked that option. And the classes, I was a little trepidatious at the beginning of the classes, thinking, well, people are going to be really upset because they're forced to be here. They're not here, it's not their choice. They didn't sign up for this. But I was very surprised. The response was very good. There were people that they wanted to vent a little bit about, why are you picking on me? Of all the people out there running red lights, why did I get a ticket? But I think they understood that this was part of a safety campaign. It was not punitive. It was something that we were trying to advance the bicycle friendliness of our community. It was about changing the culture of bicycling in our community, and people got that, and the classes actually were really good. They were very responsive. There were people that were laughing in a class that they were forced to attend. And I think it also really helped that Lieutenant Fitzgerald was there and he was in uniform, and that adds a certain gravitas to something when you have a police officer there in front of you. They went really well. We were very pleased with them. We were trying to create a program that would be community-wide so that Champaign would do the same thing that we were doing, and we were hoping that the university would as well, and that we would all offer these classes. Champaign and the university, it turns out, were not interested in offering classes. They wanted to use the League of Illinois Bicyclists online quiz instead of an actual class. We think that a class is preferable, that students, someone coming to a class is going to learn more if they have a person standing in front of them talking to them about these issues and they can ask questions. They're just going to learn more and remember more. But the online quiz is very good. It does provide really good information. It walks you through. If you get a question wrong, it tells you why you got it wrong and then gives it to you again so you can guess again until you get it right. Basically, as long as you are persistent, you will get it right. So the Champaign and the university wanted to go with that as the alternative to the full fine, and we decided that it would be better to be consistent across the community. So we, too, are offering this, the online quiz. It's also easier to administer. We don't need as much staff time to teach the classes and so on. So Champaign and Urbana this week are starting to use these programs. The city of Champaign is has started ticketing today. The city of Urbana is providing warnings for the rest of the month of August, September, and then we'll start writing tickets on October 1st. So both cities are doing what we call details, which is just like you've, I'm sure, seen police officers in their car waiting for people in cars speeding, and they're waiting to catch people and write a ticket, and they're not doing that to earn themselves money. They're doing that because that particular location has been reported as a problem. People complain to them and say, hey, there are people that are really speeding on this street, or they're running this light, or whatever the problem is, and then they go and they sit and they try and correct that problem at that particular location. So both police departments and the university will be doing these details for bicycle offenders in locations where we get a lot of complaints and where we know that there are crashes, there are interactions between bicyclists and pedestrians, bicyclists and vehicles. And so there'll be several days of details at the very end of this month. I won't give you the days and certainly not the locations, but the very end of this month, and then also in September and again in October. And so all of that is about trying to get the word out on campus, particularly because that's where we have the most bicyclists and therefore the most number of problems, that bicyclists need to follow the rules of the road, and they will get tickets if they don't. So in Urbana, you'll be receiving this brochure. I don't know if anyone watches this on television, but in case you do, this brochure, this is the warning, and it has the rules of the road and so on, and this is what you'll get until October 1st, at which point you'll get a different brochure that talks about how to take the quiz. At that point, if you get a ticket, you have to come into the city's finance department in either city, sign a plea agreement, which means that you agree that you are guilty and you're reducing your fine, and then you have to take the online quiz. When you take the online quiz, you then, at the end, you can have a certificate emailed to you, and you can then save it as a PDF or you can print it. You then have to forward it either through an email communication, the PDF, or you could mail it or you could drop it off at both cities' legal department, and within 21 days, so within 3 weeks from the time that you sign the plea agreement, you have 3 weeks to get your completion certificate. And once we've been doing that for a while, we'll then evaluate it and see whether or not we think that students are or the, I guess, the offenders, not students, are learning as much as we want them to learn, and then we'll decide whether or not we'll continue with the online quiz or if we would go back to offering the actual classes. One of the problems with the classes is, as our population is a student population and they leave, it's challenging to have enough classes that they can attend that are at the right times for their schedules. They have classes that's their reason for being here, so they're busy, they can't skip those. And then they also, some of them have jobs, and so it's much more difficult to schedule those classes than it is for them just to take a quiz online whenever they have time. If anyone has questions about that, I'd be happy to answer those.
Yeah, any questions or feedback? Cynthia?
Like to suggest, I think it's a good idea to publicize the locations that you will be ticketing. As part of sting operations, they usually do a big PR blitz and get a lot of media attention, saying we're going to be at these locations watching on these days. And amazingly, lots of people are not paying any attention despite that effort, but the educational opportunity that's provided through the media, I think, is something to consider as a free educational avenue. So I would just suggest that, as many of the places I know that do pedestrian sting operations do a very big publicity push.
Yeah, and we will. We
Okay.
are writing a press release. It'll be on the city's website.
Okay.
We did interview with the Daily Illini, and they will be writing an article in their Quad Day edition, so on Sunday. There'll be an article, and they interviewed me, Lieutenant Fitzgerald, Lieutenant Andy Clark with the Champaign Police Department, so it should cover all of it. And then we'll also be doing other press releases as well.
Any other questions or feedback? Amelia?
Can I just add a comment?
Yeah.
From the university side, just so everyone knows, the UIPD does have the authority to write citations from both cities, and they had a meeting recently with all three police departments and agreed that they would follow the same schedule that Rebecca mentioned. And then on the campus side, we are in the process of updating our bicycle code, and it will be sort of going through a public input review period for the next month or so. We haven't released it yet, but we're about to. And then enforcement of that code won't begin until the spring, so we have a while to educate people about it.
Okay.
The fines are much lower, but it basically allows us to enforce the same policies on places like the Quad, where the Illinois Vehicle Code or the city ordinances wouldn't apply. So
Okay,
that
great.
will be a better whole picture
Yeah,
enforcement. Yeah.
that's wonderful. Okay. Any other questions or feedback? Okay, thanks, Rebecca. Then next up, Brad, we have 3 different project updates here from you about Washington Street first.
Yeah, I thought I'd do this. Graphically, maybe make it a little more interesting, but I'll still try to be quick and short. These are just some pictures of completed bike infrastructure we've gotten done over the last month or two. The first one is Washington Street from Philo to Dotson. I know one of the things people have been real complimentary on this one is the buffered bike lanes. People seem to really like those. This was a project led by Craig Schonkweiler, our senior civil engineer, and Jake McCoy, one of our civil engineers. So I think it turned out real nicely. Let me jump to the next one. Go ahead.
If I could just make a comment on that one, we got a rare compliment from one of our local bicycle advocates who just recently left town and used to sit right over here. And he said that this was the best bike lane he's ever seen.
Go ahead, Cynthia.
I think the bike lanes on Washington are a huge improvement, and especially the difference in the surface. I've been using them a lot. But I had provided some feedback to you, and then I've gotten additional feedback since then. I just wanted to share with everyone. As soon as the bike lanes were in, I worked with CUMTD as a transportation planner. I got a lot of inquiries about these lanes and why they weren't buffered from the vehicles. And I drove it several times, and I couldn't figure out why at first it was different, because we have bike lanes right next to travel lanes all over town. It finally dawned on me, if you go back to the first picture there, Brad, because of the center median, you can't swerve if a bicyclist should fall in front of you, swerve in front of you, etc. You have no place to go. The only place you could swerve would be into the bike lane. And the bus operators deal with a lot of difficult and dangerous bicycle behavior, and so they really would like to see some buffering for future projects between them and the bike lane. I think in this case we could have put buffering on both sides and provided that opportunity. The most recent input I got was from someone who rides a recumbent trike. They told me that because of the width of their trike, vehicles are not able to give them the 3-foot passing distance if they're in the bike lane, that they have to actually move to the right out of the bike lane in order for vehicles to pass. So they have to watch to see if there are any large vehicles coming up, because there's not enough space for the vehicle to give them that passing space. So I just wanted to share that. I think we've only got a couple of other locations, maybe Illinois Street, where we would have a road diet with a center median. I really think that's the only location in which it's particularly difficult, and something that we want to keep in mind as we design bike lanes in the future. But I have been using them a lot. I think it's a huge improvement, and I appreciate all the work that staff did. I think it's, I see a lot more cyclists out there now, and I think it's going to be very nice for the kids biking back and forth to school. I didn't have a chance to go out today and watch and see how they were using it, but I've been using this Kinch and the Florida Street bike lanes to access Homer Lake Road, and it really has made a big difference. So.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think that is important feedback. There's all kinds of subtleties, and you're right, the center lane makes it harder sometimes to give a 3-foot passing distance, and I can kind of understand what the MTD operators are feeling there, kind of bounded by it. So so I appreciate that, and I do think it is a huge step up.
Yes, it is.
Any other comments on Washington? Or okay, Brad, go ahead with.
Well, I just want to
all
point out,
these.
this is one adjustment that we've had to kind of make after the fact. This is up at the intersection of Cottage Grove and Washington, and we did have an issue where, and I don't know if you can see my kind of crosshairs here, we did have an issue where some vehicles weren't understanding when they got up to the intersection that, you know, anyone making a right-hand turn, that was a shared, you know, bike automobile lane, and we had some issues with people trying to turn from that outside lane across the bike lane. So, you know, after receiving some input on that, we did evaluate that, and Craig and Jake made arrangements to have, you know, additional pavement markings, which you can see is the straight through and the turn arrow, to hopefully educate people or inform people that, you know, if they want to make a right-hand turn, they need to get over to that right-hand side and not turn from that from that inside lane.
Yeah.
So, jump down to the next one. The next one I want to talk about is the Fairlawn Adams multi-use path. And the first bit of news on this is the city is planning to do a ribbon cutting September 14th at 3 p.m. out at the site. So a couple of the neighborhood associations are going to be present. So I encourage anybody that wants to come out.
Can you repeat the day and time?
September 14th at 3 p.m.
It's like a Saturday. Great.
And just a couple of things to point out that you can see in the picture here. You can notice we do have these solar-powered pedestrian lights on this. It is an 8-foot wide multi-use path that connects a dead-end cul-de-sac to the intersection of the Fairlawn Adams. You can see we've got the landscaping in place. It was planted with a 5-foot grass, you know, turf-type buffer with a prairie planting beyond that. And this is just a picture from the other end, but we think it turned out real nice. We've got lots of compliments on it. So the one thing we're considering doing is we've had some concerns about bicyclists and pedestrians not stopping when they get to the intersection of Fairlawn Adams. So we're considering maybe putting up some sort of warning or yield or stop sign for the bicyclists and pedestrians to remind them that they need to stop before they reach the intersection, because it is not a stop controlled intersection.
I think that's a good idea. I've been many places where they have that.
So that's something I would anticipate that will get installed, shortly. And then the next one I want to share with you, and these are kind of some various locations throughout the city, but this was the Safe Routes to School grant money that the city got. We got $199,000 to put in bike lanes, bike routes, and bike parking at the school locations. We've got the bike lanes are all installed, and it was a combination of bike lanes, and then I have some pictures to show you of the shared bike parking lane, which is kind of new and unique. And in fact, Rebecca and I were talking today about getting an article, up on the website to explain people, what those are. But we're still waiting on the signs. They're supposed to be shipping out this week, so we haven't been able to put up the bike route signs yet, as well as the bike racks. They've done the concrete pads for the bike racks, but we're waiting for the actual bike racks to show up. They're being fabricated and should be shipped pretty shortly. But this is Kinch from Washington to Florida. Just an example of the bike lane there. This is Florida. We did that from Kinch to Race. It's got bike lanes on it. And then between Kinch and Rutledge, we actually extended the multi-use path. It kind of ended at Kinch, and we actually extended it, further west to Rutledge, and the bike lane actually merges into the multi-use path. So if you're continuing east, down Florida Avenue, at that point the bike lane ends and you transition into the multi-use path. So this is a picture. This week they're working on, that extending that multi-use path. You can see they've got the path extension at least partially poured, and they'll be working on the driveway approaches. So that's coming along, and we would anticipate, that'll probably be done shortly. This is an example of the shared bike parking lane. You'll notice there is no bike markings in it because it's not a true bike lane, because both automobiles, can park in it as well as bikes use it. If there's a vehicle parked in it, then the bike would just go out into the travel lane and go around the parked vehicle. But the reason this treatment was chosen was, for these particular streets, there's such a low volume of parking on it that, parked vehicles, particularly during the day, is not a major impediment to bicycle traffic moving through the area. So on Anderson, all the way from Florida to Mumford, we installed these shared bike parking lanes. Yes.
I use this regularly because I live down by Yankee Ridge Elementary, and they have impacted behavior on the roadway
They slow
already.
traffic down a
Yes,
little bit.
and bicyclists are using them
Good.
more often. I was also told by my husband that he really appreciates them. He uses them for jogging. And I have seen elderly people in the neighborhood also using them. It's interesting how many times I see, even though it's not the intended purpose, I see people in motorized wheelchairs on our bike infrastructure because it provides smoother access sometimes than some of the sidewalks. So I think that they're making a difference for people in the neighborhood, and they like them. And we'll have bike route signs along here?
Yes, we will. We're waiting
Okay.
for those to come in. And in fact, if you notice, if you go along any of the bike lanes, you'll notice we have temporary no parking signs up. So we're very anxious to get in our permanent signs, because I have to have an engineering technician go with a dry erase marker about every 2 weeks and refresh the no parking sign. So we're anxious to get the permanent ones in.
Okay.
They're a little
Great.
less maintenance.
Sue?
I had some feedback about that, though, from somebody at Parkland, where they just really didn't feel like it said bicycles should go here at all. And he wasn't really sure that a bicycle route sign was going to do that. And so, I just urged him to say, well, gosh, Anderson would be a great candidate for a greenway bike boulevard as well down there, with the really low traffic, to consider that treatment.
And that's what I mentioned. Rebecca and I were talking about maybe trying to do some article, because I have got some feedback or questions from people on what the white lines were for. So we were hopeful, maybe we could, do that article and explain. But, I too have seen people using them, so people have been able to figure it out. But
Yeah.
It defined the space for the vehicles to drive in and narrowed down the travel lane. So I feel like it also slowed the traffic and pushed vehicles into driving in that location. So those who want to bicycle out of the lane vehicles are in use the parking lane even if they don't understand. Although I can see how someone who's looking for marked infrastructure, this doesn't give them that reassurance of marked infrastructure.
yeah.
Like a bike lane.
Yeah.
There's
I
a-
do think it is, since this is the first one of these treatments we've done, that this is a perfect opportunity to try and do a press release or whatever we can to get the word out a bit and see if we can educate folks. Because I do agree. It's our first one. It's a little unusual. It's not something we've had elsewhere in town. And to explain to people, some explanation is needed, especially once the signs are there, it'll help a bit. But
Can we do like a ribbon cutting for the signs?
Yeah.
So that, we did that on Philo. I think we ought to celebrate our successes. I know you said we're going to do it for Fairlawn.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, we can do that once we have the signs up. But I'm going to guess it's probably going to be sometime in September, but when we have them all installed.
maybe we could do it there at Florida and Anderson, where you have both the bike lanes on Florida and,
Yeah, that'd be a good idea.
okay, great.
And then a couple more locations to share. This is Pennsylvania, where we also did the shared bike parking lanes from Anderson to Vine. I'll point out all of these. Apparently there's some problem with our camera, because I did not take these in 2012. I took them today. So, this one is a picture of Fairview. This was bike lanes installed between Lincoln and Goodwin, right in front of King's School. So this is just a picture of those. And then just a little update on some other construction going on. These don't actually have the bike infrastructure in place yet, but there is the construction going on, kind of preceding the resurfacing that, after resurfacing is done, then the bike lanes will go in. But Broadway Avenue from University to Elm, most of the improvements on Broadway are close to being done, and once we get to resurfacing, then we'll mark them out with the bike lanes. Main Street, Cedar to Vine, and also Main Street Grove to Scottswood. Apologize for the typo there. That's under construction. We don't anticipate they'll probably do any resurfacing until a little bit later in September, but once the resurfacing starts, the pavement marking will follow pretty quickly behind that. And then, finally, the one that's probably the longest from completion is the multi-use path. That'll be part of the Boneyard Creek. It'll run along the south side of the creek between Grigg Street and Broadway. I would anticipate that one would probably be a 2014 completion. But the rest of them on there, the Broadway and the main streets, I would anticipate will be done here before the end of the year. So even more bike infrastructure to come.
Yeah, great. Thank you for the updates.
No problem.
Any other questions or feedback on all that? Yeah, 3 chairs. I had one little piece of feedback, which is just something for us to probably keep thinking about in the Bike Master Plan update in the future. I know on the segment of Washington where you showed, we have those cases where there's the right turn lane. Well, it's a straight through or right turn lane, and we have symbols, arrows indicating that's where we want to position cyclists that are proceeding straight through. But then I noticed when we did striping on Florida, I think maybe Florida and Vine is a good example of this. There are places where there are 2 lanes, and we have the sharrows in the left of most of those 2 lanes, and so we're in those cases we're kind of indicating that bikes take a different position than what we did on Washington, even though I think it's the same traffic situation where some of the traffic is just going straight or left and other traffic is going straight or right.
Mm-hmm.
And so it is a slight inconsistency. I think the fact that there's sharrows in both places kind of means that if you're a cyclist and you just look at where the picture is painted and follow the picture, you'll be okay. But it is a slight inconsistency, and so when it comes to training and education and trying to teach bicyclists to be predictable, we just have to make sure we think about, are we being predictable as we kind of lay out these patterns? And I don't know the answer. I know you all talked about it and considered where to put those sharrows on Washington, and There were lots of conversations about it, but I think anything we can keep doing to be predictable as we go will help.
I had really felt, and talked to other people too, that the ones on Washington were too far to the right, because they really, if you were going straight and lots of people turn right there, and they were tucked over in the right corner. So I had kind of been glad to see that, okay, they learned, and they got them out where you should be. And I love the ones that are, where you actually see the car here, bike here, that really speaks to, oh, it's okay for me to be behind a bike. I really like those.
Cool. Any other comments or feedback before we move on? Okay, thank you again. Okay, then next tonight under new business, here, if I can wake my computer up again. The first new business item is the discussion about Broadway Avenue bike lanes and sort of the update. And I know Bill spoke to this
Yeah, I
a
was
bit.
going to say, Alderman Brown did such a good job. I don't know if I have much to add to it. I guess I'll bring it up for, if anyone wants to add any input or say anything about it. But I mean, I think he conveyed all the information, that there's available on it. I did bring, if anybody wants to see, I do have the council memo, from that, particular meeting. So if you wanted to actually see what the bike lane, let's see if I can do this. And then I got to can I rotate? Maybe not. Go. There we go.
Ah.
Let's see if I can blow this up a little bit. Ow, I messed it up. Let me try this again. But they did have a map that I thought was really great at showing, and I mean there definitely, obviously is a big impact on parking, which this map shows. Where am I rotating? Clockwise. And you can see the way this map is color coded is the red hatched areas are existing no parking areas, and then the blue hatched areas are areas that currently where parking is allowed, that it would be restricted. There would be no parking in order to accommodate the bike lanes. So you can see, starting down here at Washington, going up to Illinois, what the impacts are. And you can kind of see, you have to kind of look closely, but you can actually see the bike lanes underneath the hatching, indicating, if additional parking removals were required. So.
And can you kind of summarize where, I think with council, if I'm remembering right, the decision was kind of just to hold off and ask staff for some more data about parking volumes, and that the timeline of this is that actually a final decision doesn't have to be made for maybe another year?
Yeah, they were planning on not doing the resurfacing until spring 2014, so we should have plenty of time to look at the parking and get a feel for what kind of parking demand there is out there.
Okay. Cynthia?
I had a question and a comment. A couple of things that I was at that meeting, and the week before I was at the meeting in the city of Champaign, a study session that had a similar situation on State Street. And one of the things that struck me was that a number of rental property owners came forward and expressed the sentiment that the on-street parking had to be preserved to provide parking for their tenants. And I was a little surprised that no one on the city council pointed out that providing parking for tenants is the responsibility of the property owner, not the city. It's not the city's job to provide parking for rental properties. And at the city of Champaign, Tom Bruno made a very eloquent presentation on the issue of public right-of-ways and how we come to think of the space in front of our house as ours, when in fact it's primarily there to provide mobility and access for the other, 39,999 people who live in our community. So I wanted to ask about that, because I know in part of the downtown there is an overlay district that says that rental properties do not have to provide parking for tenants. Is this in that area? Was that an expectation that is based on anything that the city is supposed to be doing? And so I wanted to get some
Yeah, I'd have to
feedback
defer
on
to
that.
Rebecca in planning.
Yeah, what do you know, Rebecca?
So in the downtown zoning district, there is no parking required, and that is because generally buildings take up the entire lot, and that's what we want. We want them to build right to the line, not have parking out front, which is what would happen. Broadway Avenue is not in that district, not
Okay.
that part of it. It really is the business core. There's no real residential in that that downtown business district.
Okay.
Okay. Any other feedback or questions on Broadway? Okay. Then next on your list tonight was the pavement marking project.
Yeah, and to give you a little bit of background on this, this city, in combination with some aid from the state, we used to take care of all our pavement markings in-house, and in fact we still do a majority of them. But the state of Illinois used to, the DOT used to come in and help us out, particularly with what they call the long striping, which is the center line markings on street, as well as the bike lane markings. You have to have pretty specialized equipment. They have these really specialized trucks in order to, keep a line straight over a long distance, as well as, provide, safety and traffic control for the operators doing it. And we just can't afford that equipment at the city level. We do have, some pavement marking equipment, but it's more suited for doing like crosswalks and doing the Sharrow markings, and the bike symbol markings, whereas the long lining is a little bit of a challenge, for our crews to do. And like I said previously, the state has helped us well with their financial and other issues. They've withdrawn that aid, so we're having to take on that responsibility. So one of the things we're in the process of doing is what they call a pavement striping project, where we'll actually contract this out. I would anticipate a local contractor, probably like Varsity Striping, will get the work. But so if you see or notice any bike lanes that are starting to fade, and we have a number of locations here in town, they will be freshened up here before the end of the year and get a fresh coat of paint. Usually the paint lasts 1 to 2 years. Sometimes you can stretch it out a little longer, but that's something we're working on. But kind of in conjunction with that project, and we're obviously going to refresh all the existing markings that are faded. There were a couple locations where we were looking at an opportunity of maybe adding some bike lanes that are part of the master plan that we could potentially piggyback, onto this project. And one that was under consideration was Bradley Avenue, basically from the west city limits all the way over to Lincoln Avenue. A little bit about this particular cross-section. It's an extremely wide pavement, if you've ever driven through it. In fact, one of the issues we have is people are confused or don't understand that, whether it's a one-lane, travel direction, each way, or whether it's two. In fact, I was out driving it today, and there was someone driving alongside of me, which is illegal because it actually isn't two travel lanes in each direction. So, in this location, I think, putting in the bike lanes would help with some vehicular issues as well. If you look in the bike master plan, they were originally calling for a 15.5-foot wide travel lane in each direction, and then a 6-foot wide bike lane. Something we would potentially look at is putting in a buffered lane, rather than going. I think a 15.5-foot wide lane is probably excessive. 11 or 12, I think, probably would be adequate. So that's something that we're looking at. We might have to change order that into the project, but and I'll share the design. We haven't actually done any design work on this yet. It's something we'll have to get on here shortly. But this is a potential location. There is no parking in this section too, which makes it, fairly easy, because there would be no opposition to losing parking, because there is none on there. So.
Yeah.
The reason it's so confusing is it's 4 lanes as soon as you hit Champaign city limits. So that's very confusing. There is all the multifamily on the north side of Bradley, and we have a lot of students taking Goodwin because we have the multi-use path that goes straight into campus.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a lot of people crossing Bradley, and I agree with you, if the 15.5-foot lane is going to encourage people to continue to drive very quickly. So I think designing it, and we have more experience now with, and more data on protected bike lanes, so that would be fantastic if we could do that. Hooray.
So that was one location. The other
Rebecca?
one
Yeah,
go-
Rebecca had a comment too.
I would just like to add that, that Bradley Avenue is a major east-west street in the northern part of our city where we don't have a lot of bicycle infrastructure installed. And so I think this might go a long way to getting people on the north side of town involved in our bicycle network.
And I think it connects with the Champaign facility. I mean, I think, if I'm remembering Champagne's plan, isn't there something on Bradley eventually in their vision for bike and ped? Okay. Because I think when we originally put Bradley in our bike master plan, I know there was some sense to it connecting on either end. So even though originally this might seem a little odd to do this one segment and it'd feel like, well, where am I going to go once I hit Champaign, or how am I going to get further east in Urbana? I know eventually that there will be some more connection there.
And then the other location that we're considering, and this one we may actually want to put off because it has potential to involve some parking removal, so I don't think it's really heavily utilized for parking. But this is Amber between Philo and Myra Ridge. Now, this is a narrower pavement. This is a 30-foot wide pavement. So if we put it bike lanes, as it was designated in the master plan, it would be, a 5-foot wide bike lane, a 10-foot wide travel lane, in each direction, another 5-foot. And this is a MTD bus route, so this might be one it's worth going back as part of the master plan and taking a look at. So I originally threw this out as maybe wanting to include it in the contract for this year, but I'm thinking that it might be a wiser decision to push this out and maybe let the master plan take a look at it. Like I said, I don't think there's a huge parking impact. It would be mostly these multifamily houses kind of down as you get close to, but it is a fairly narrow pavement. I know MTD has two bus stops on,
And it's got, what with Meyer there's just lots of weird traffic flow, so people would be coming and
Yeah,
going
there'd be
in and
definitely
out.
some trucks coming in and out
Exactly.
of Meyer.
I think that, that we need to,
And right hook potential with people, so
Huge.
many people who come in there from Philo to Amber, and that's their way into the Meyer
into
parking
Meyer,
lot.
right. That's
If-
because that's real
I can
tricky.
understand too why the reason they picked it, because there's a multi-use path that goes down Myra Ridge to the south. There's also one that proceeds down Amber Lane to the east. And you come over here on Philo, you've got the multi-use path, on the east
connects to the
side.
one on Windsor
So
as well.
it does provide a good piece of connection, but I'm just thinking that, it might be something good to go back and take a look as part of the master plan. We could always, incorporate in. We're planning on doing these pavement marking contracts on an annual basis. So, we should have an opportunity every year, if we wanted to add some additional bike lanes to be able to do it as part of that.
Okay, that sounds
I
great.
use the street a lot since I live just the other side of Philo Road. And so I think we do need to take a look at what we proposed on there. However, I will say that because it's so long and straight, people do go fast. And so
And it is a 15-foot wide lane now. Because
yes, it is too wide, and so we may need to look at something like a wider bike lane on one side, Cheros on the other, or something. We'll just have to look at all of our design options. But I think narrowing the vehicular lanes would be helpful, and I rarely see vehicles parked.
Yeah,
on
I
Amber
didn't
Lane.
know
Right,
was
I
out
don't
there
think that's
today.
going to be a big deal,
But
but I don't think, yeah.
It would be a tight fit for bike lanes.
Yeah.
And I don't think, we don't need, I think we need to learn from the tight fit bike lanes, bike lanes, buses, all kinds of weird conflicting intersections. That's asking for trouble.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to kind of bring those up and throw those
Okay.
out to get people to start thinking
So
about
it
those.
sounds like generally people are comfortable with what you're thinking about both of these.
Okay.
I looked up the Champaign vision, and it does have bike lanes on Bradley.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's changing, but yeah.
Great.
Looks like it.
It needs it. Yeah.
Can I also make a general comment
Yeah.
to your earlier topic of restriping and repainting? Anywhere where bike lanes and buses cross, I think need probably extra, more than every 2 years. I've noticed, at least on campus, where buses pull into the bike lanes for their stops.
We have some areas where they
Yeah,
wear out quickly.
it's-
Yeah.
Oh, that it wears out the
Yeah, it just
marking.
wears out much faster. And I've noticed there's, like, Goodwin is a good sort of case study to look and
We
see.
do have that on the list
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
for the
So
pa-
just-
pavement marking contract.
Just to be
Okay.
aware when you're looking at the whole city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, we'll
Okay.
go around every year and reevaluate, and if we can, obviously, if we can squeeze 2 or 3 years out of pavement marking, we will. But
Yeah.
I'm sure there'll be lots of areas where it's getting an annual treatment.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Any other feedback on that? Okay. Next tonight is announcements. There's only one listed on the agenda about the Market at the Square Bike Rodeo. Let's see. Who knows the most about that? Maybe Rebecca?
I can do that. So the Safe Routes to School project is hosting a bike rodeo for kids at the Market at the Square. It will be in the parking lot just to the south of the market's location at Illinois and Vine, actually just west of Illinois and Vine. And it's from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. on September 21st, Saturday morning. We also have, not listed on there, but we do have a couple of other announcements. One is Light the Night, not Night the Light, Light the Night on September 12th, where the CATS agencies, both cities, the university, the MTD, is that it? Work together to, Cynthia's got a flyer, and we have one here. We'll put these on the city's website as well. So that is Thursday, September 12th from 4 to 7 p.m. Two locations on campus at the corner of Wright and Green Streets at the Alma Mater, and also the corner of Lincoln and Illinois near ISR. We work to install a set of blinky lights that Cynthia might have the samples of here that she can show us. So anyone in the community, you have to bring your bicycle. And we do install them onto bikes. This year we have a new style of lights, so they're much easier to install. They come with the batteries in them. They're lovely little tiny flexible things, so they're very easy to take on and off your bike. And we will be installing those until we run out or until 7 o'clock, whichever comes first. Do come early if you intend to get a set, just in case we run out. We ran out last year. And then also,
And is that
probably
one that has a volunteer need? Like, as it gets closer, will
we
you
do have a
maybe-
volunteer need.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually the bike rodeo also has a volunteer need. So we will be sending you emails asking for your help if you're available
Yes.
for both of those events. And also through Champaign County Bikes, we'll send out a request for volunteers as well.
Great.
And then the other thing, I'm sure everyone, knows about this, but we have the new bicycle maps put out by Champaign County Bikes. They are fantastic. I handed out a few tonight. If anyone wants to take more, we do have them. They're located all over town, the cities, the libraries, bike shops, other places, all over campus.
Illinois Terminal.
Parkland. Parkland has them. All over, and they're also available online, and they are fantastic. They have really good information. They have lessons on how to use all of the infrastructure, on the rules of the road, on tips for safe riding, like what kind of lights. They have location of all of the bicycle shops, the fix-it stations, basically everything bicycle in our community, right here.
Great. Cynthia?
One quick correction on the bike rodeo. It goes from 9 to 11:30 on the 21st.
And the volunteer shifts, do you know what they are? Are they like?
We usually have two shifts. We'll do 8 to 10 and 10 to 12 because we have setup and breakdown.
Okay.
And we provide bagels and beverages
Okay.
for volunteers, and we'll have an online volunteer. We'll send that to everybody here. And on Light the Night, I brought everybody a flyer tonight. I managed to get this updated for this year's dates. And I took the blinky lights home because they're very adorable. They have our logo. They have a logo. It says CU, or it has a bike, and then it has CU. But I managed not to transfer them into my bag to bike up here tonight. But this is what they look like. I don't know whether we can, anybody can see that. They're silicone wraparounds. They're brighter than the lights that we've been using, and they'll be very easy to take off and on, and so they'll be quicker to install. They were less expensive, so we were able to buy more of them, and I think people are going to really like those a lot.
That's cool.
I also brought along a flyer for everybody. We have 2 walk and roll to school day events. Our balanced calendar schools are not in session during the international event in October, so we hold a special one for them. This year it will be September 6th. We only have those schools in Champaign, and this year the Regional Planning Commission did a Safe Routes to School plan for Thomasboro, and they're doing an event on their own with some assistance from CU Public Health. And so we always look for volunteers, and the mayor of Champaign's going to be walking with the students from Barksdall. The big event then is on the other side. That's October 9th, and the elementary schools in Urbana are invited to participate. We have to hear back from them that they want to participate. We provide all of the participating schools with walkability and bikeability checklists and a Safe Routes to School map, a safety tip sheet for parents with a letter explaining what we're doing. We try to get U of I athletic team members to come and join them, along with other celebrities, which could include members of BPAC. You are invited to come and join any of our local schools. One other thing I brought a flyer for is we have 2 programs going at Urbana Middle School. We have a voltage program. This is part of our Safe Routes to School grant. We were able to purchase a solar-powered counter, and students who sign up get a credit card-sized card that counts each trip they make to school when they go by it. We did a pilot kickoff for May with the middle school students and just did bikes, and kids really, really liked it a lot. It was a lot of fun. We're going to expand it to pedestrians this coming year, and so they can sign up for that. Their parents can sign them up, or they can go to the teacher listed here, Mr. and Mrs. Loads. Then on the other side, we have our class. This is the first time we will have done that. We will be doing a splash class at the Urbana Middle School. It will be on Wednesday starting September 18th. It runs through October 23rd. It's 6 weeks. And we will be teaching you everything you need to know how to ride and take care of your bike. And we're going to do things like teach them rules of the road, lane positioning, how to change your tire, how to ride on different kinds of infrastructure. We'll be doing a helmet fitting and a melon drop where they actually want us to go up on the roof, and we will drop a melon without a helmet, and we will drop a melon with a helmet so they can see the difference it makes in your head if you wear a helmet when you're riding a bike. So we're going to try and make it as fun, as interactive as possible. I contacted the 2 team members who were winning team in the Race Across America. This is, some of you may not know, it's a basically insane race across the country. Bicyclists bike all the way across the country in a week. Some of them do it by themselves with support teams. There's a documentary on this, and these guys did it as a team and came in 3rd place. So I contacted them and asked them if they'll come talk to our students, because I think they would be really excited to see these sort of elite athletes come. So those are things that we have going on. I have some extra copies if anybody wants them. All of these events look for volunteers, and so we'd be delighted to have BPAC members. We try and provide as much opportunity for pedestrians as bicyclists with our Safe Routes to School program. Yes.
I just had a thought about the melon drop. I think we should ask our UPTV cameraman to come out, film that, and then we could do all sorts of fun things with that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great idea.
What is the age range for the splash course?
It's for middle school students, so it would be 6th through 8th. And they don't have to have their own bike. We can help students who would like to come that don't have a bike. I know there's going to be a bike giveaway coming up through the police department, so we have some opportunities like that. And if they don't have a helmet, we can also work on that. But for the on-bike rides, the field trips and things we're going to do, you do have to have a helmet. And so we will be encouraging that. We'd like to see high school students do these things too, maybe have a bike team, but our grant doesn't extend past 8th grade.
Okay, great. Rebecca?
Thank you for reminding me. The bike giveaway is September 19th. It's organized by the Urbana Police Department, and so there'll be a press release coming out and information on the city's website. Probably about a week before that, we'll be getting that information out. But it is September 19th, and I was actually out at our storage facility, and there are a lot of really nice bikes.
Yeah.
A lot of really nice ones. We're actually taking a couple of bikes for the Urbana City Building for city employees to have a bike share program. So we've gone and selected 2 of the best.
Cool. Great. Amelia?
One last announcement. Well, I don't know if it's the last one, but there is I don't know all the details for it, but there will be a ribbon cutting for the Granger Crosswalk on Springfield the same day as Light the Night. It's in the morning, I believe 10 a.m., but I'm not sure exactly of the time, if anyone else in the room knows more. But I can find out if anyone is interested.
Great. Yeah, definitely share that with the group.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll do.
Okay. Any other announcements? Okay. Then, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think next year we'll be applying for our bicycle-friendly community status and hopefully move up. And I'm assuming we'll be talking about that and what it takes to become a next level community in the coming months. Okay.
Okay. 2014. Yeah. That came fast. Okay. Okay. Great. Our next meeting then will be in 2 months. That'll be Tuesday, October 17th. Same time, same place. Yes. Yeah, it should be. Is that right? Let's see. Oh, okay. Good catch. So it is Tuesday, the 15th of October. 2 months from tonight. Yep. Okay. Tuesday, the 15th of October. Yeah, it was just wrong on the agenda, but it's Tuesdays as usual. So I'm glad we mentioned it. We'll be here again at 7 o'clock, and we'll send out agendas and packets before the meeting. Until then, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much.